Hey guys, sorry for the long wait. I'm doing a recap of BBR Chicago, but BBR Chicago is done. It's now about 3 days after the fact, and had quite a busy schedule right after the tournament, so I couldn't get a video out. But here we are. Here's the banner right behind me up on my wall, and I forgot to have everyone sign it before everyone left, so I was just in a hurry, wrapping up the gold game and packing things away that I forgot to ask everyone to sign it. So I guess what we can do is maybe bring it to St. Louis, and a lot of you that went to BBR Chicago went to St. Louis or go to St. Louis usually, so we can have some of you sign it then, or maybe next year for BBR Chicago if we do it. So all in all, I think BBR Chicago was a success. We implemented the new seeding system for the day one matchups, and then we did the new seeding system for day two matchups. If you want to take a look at those in more depth, I have some videos talking about those, and it seemed to work out really well, especially the day two seeding, because we looked at all the matchups from the day one scores that factored into the day two matchups, and they all looked like pretty even matchups. It worked out pretty well, and they produced some pretty good games. So I'm going to kind of go through some of those games right now and just do a recap. But before I forget, I do want to give a very special thanks once again to Big John Sr., Rommel, and his son, Junior, for bringing the tables for the tournament. They also brought a lot of the facilities pieces like complexes, naval bases, air bases, and such. And they were such a huge help in making BBR Chicago a possibility. So without them, we probably wouldn't have been able to do it this year. So really big thanks to them. Another thanks to Combat Miniatures for supplying a lot of the prizes for the tournament. They were also a huge help in getting the maps printed. And Rich also made an appearance from Combat Miniatures on day three. Was able to play a little bit in one of the games, so that was pretty cool. He also got this banner printed for me. I just designed it, and I said, hey, can your printer do it for me in a hurry? And he said, yeah. So he took care of it for me, so that was awesome. Another thanks to Moose Cow for helping run the thing and be the point person when it came to rules, so that I could just focus more on the games I was in. I laid the groundwork pretty much for the tournament, did everything to make it happen. And then once we were there playing, I kind of relied a little bit more on Moose Cow to help run things. And it was a huge help and a relief for me. I mean, and in general, everyone that was there was great. Almost everyone came there early to help set up the tables too. That was a huge help. And, we all made this possible as a community, and that was just such a cool thing to see. And it seemed like everybody had a really good time. We only had two teams that did not play on day three, but it was their choice not to play on day three. We did have the jokingly called Copper game set up to happen, but one of the teams just backed out, appearingly because of exhaustion. It was their first tournament. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's 3 days all day playing a very intense game. And then we had another team which could have played possibly for copper or iron back out as well. So it is what it is. It happens. At least they didn't back out on day one or day two. That would have been bad. Day three, I guess it's your choice if you want to play. I would have liked to have seen them stick it out, but they didn't. So yeah, we all made this happen as a community, and we all played our roles. And to me, it was a success, even though it was a smaller tournament. I definitely foresee this becoming a bigger tournament down the line, because everyone had glowing reviews about the venue, the hotel itself. And a big thanks to Hampton Inn and Suites for hosting us. The room is great. We were able to temperature control everything. The lighting was great. There was tons of room. We had refrigerators there, counter space, running water, even free coffee from the hotel. It was all perfect. There's no complaints there in terms of the hotel. I mean, the rooms themselves are a little bit pricier than most hotels, but in terms of the venue we got to use to play the game, it was fantastic. So I definitely hope they will have us next year if we decide to do this. So I just I have my clipboard here from the tournament, and just wanted to go over a few things that happened. So day one, we used our new scoring system, our seeding system, where we had a top tier of teams, the top half of teams, and then versus the bottom half of teams, and we randomly drew it. So the top half was we decided who was in the top half by past tournament performance. So you can it's pretty easy to go back and look who won medals from each of the tournaments, you know, gold, silver, bronze, iron, and you just sort of see, okay, what are our top teams? So that's the way we did it, and those scores from day one factored into the day two matchups. So day one, we had some higher scores, we had some negative scores, but overall we had, it was almost 50-50 tournament, a whole tournament wide, all 3 days. It was almost 50-50 Axis victories versus Allied victories. So with the new rules that Siren implemented, it seemed to really balance things out, so that was good. But day one, we did see a kind of a freak game happened where it ended early around 1:30 or 2 in the afternoon, and Berlin fell on round 4. And I'm not trying to rub it in or like trying to make the team that this happened to feel bad, but it was sort of a freak game, and it's worth noting because it yielded a score that was so high. I've never seen a score this high before in a tournament. It was 55 points for the victor. Part of the reason it happened is Paris did not fall on turn 1 to the Germans, and the Allies piled on in Paris with their whole air force and a bomber drop from London. Then France was able to build 6 infantry in there, and it was kind of a disaster. So, but Paris did eventually fall in that game, but the Axis players did not remember about the round 3 rule, where the Soviet Union could come into the war earlier if there are more than 10 ground units on the Eastern Front. So they did not remember that rule, and the Soviet Union was able to come in with massive force into Warsaw, and then round 4 they had the odds to take Berlin, and they did. And the Germans or the Italians were not able to get it back, because also Rome had fallen on the same round. So Rome and Berlin fell in the same round. Sorry, my battery said it was slow. So that was kind of a freak game. And then we also had a high score of 46 points for the Sauerkrauts, which is Krautfather and Jonah playing against XX Committee. And we had a 42-point score for the Axis with the Prussian Grenadiers playing Clown World. After that, the next highest score was 32 points for Apple Corps against Pinky and the Brain. And I don't recall what the 5th score for the victor was. Oh yeah, it was 25. It's right behind me anyway, I can just check. It was 25 for the Midwest Command, and now the game between Midwest Command and Moose Raiders, that was probably the game of the day because it was so close. It was down to the wire. It literally came down to the last battle of the game on Russia 8 for Stalingrad. How poetic. And the Russians were able to get it back at the very end and keep the Axis to 11 victory points. So that was a very, very close game. It could have gone either way. And congratulations to Midwest Command for pulling it off. So day 2 matchups. Day 2 matchups were the Mad Hammers, featuring myself, Hammer Time, and Cucamonga, playing against, let's see if I can remember here, who did we play against? We played against the Moose Raiders. That was Moose Cow and Raider Bill. So got a good old rivalry there with the 2 coordinators of BBR Chicago playing at day 2. Then we had the Sauerkrauts, which is the Krautfather versus Krautfather and Jonah versus the Apple Corps, which is Fearing and Beetletoll. What else did we have? We had the Prussian Grenadiers versus Midwest Command. Midwest Command coming off of that very narrow victory on day 1. And then we had Team Blackhawk versus Clown World, and what was the other one? We had XX Committee versus Pinky and the Brain. So for day 2, Prussian Grenadiers really knocked it out of the park. That was the game they scored 23 victory points as Axis, I think, or was that day 1? No, day 1 they scored. I think it was 23 victory points. I might be getting it mixed up. Let's see. Yeah, they were allies on day 2, so my mistake. So they scored big on that day. They scored 42 on day 1 and 42 on day 2. So that was pretty impressive. That gave them a cumulative score of 84, which only ended up being the second highest score by only 2 points. The Mad Hammers had 86. In third, in terms of cumulative points, was 77 points, and that was the Sauerkrauts. Sauerkrauts eked out another big victory on day 2 against Applecore. They were playing Axis. I think they ended with 16 or 18 victory points. Can't remember, but pretty sizable victory against Applecore. And then Pinky and the Brain, they scored a victory against XX Committee after losing on day 1. And then Team Blackhawk won a decent victory. Let's see how many points they got. They got 24 points against Clown World. So after that tough loss on day 1, they were able to eke out a victory on day 2, which was pretty cool to see happen. So yeah, on day 2, I'm trying to think if there was any close games. I don't recall. Sorry, my memory is not the best, but it definitely looks like the Team Blackhawk versus Clown World game was a little closer if the score was only 24. Let's see what else. Pinky and the Brain only scored 25 in that one, so that one looked a little bit closer as well. But the rest of the games were convincing victories. So, seeing that, that night we looked at all the top scoring teams. So the top number 1 scoring team was Mad Hammers. Number 2, Prussian Grenadiers. Number 3, Sauerkrauts. Number 4 was Applecore at 37 points total. Fifth place was Pinky and the Brain, this was one of the teams that ended up backing out due to exhaustion. So they chose not to play on day 3, so we cut them out of the running there for the medal round. And then after that was Midwest Command, Moose Raiders, Team Blackhawk, and Clown World. So with the first choice, the Mad Hammers chose to play for gold. With the second choice, the Prussian Grenadiers reluctantly chose gold. Junior and senior were sort of having disagreements on whether to play for gold or not, but they ended up choosing to play for gold, and Mad Hammers chose to play as Axis. So that was the gold game right there. And then the Sauerkrauts, being the third highest score, they chose the silver game. And having Applecore being 4th in points, having just played the Sauerkrauts that day, they opted not to play for silver. They opted to play down and play for the bronze game. So that left an opening for Midwest Command to play for silver, which they chose to, since the Applecore didn't. And then Applecore were to play against the Moose Raiders. Now, the Moose Raiders, they lost both of their games so far, but their score was high enough at this point, and with the fact that the Pinky and the Brain backed out, that they could play for bronze. And then we had the iron game, the Team Blackhawk versus Clown World once again. So that was the lineup for the middle rounds. We didn't end up having our copper game, as we called it, so we were going to call it. That's okay, that's fine. So going into the medal rounds, the iron table, that one seemed like the most lively table of the game, of the day. It seemed to be the table having the most fun, which was cool to see. That game almost pretty much went the distance, I think. I can't remember if it went to round 8 or round 7, but it ended with the Allies, Team Blackhawk, taking Tokyo with 1 tank left, which was pretty cool. That was a great way for that one to end. So that one wrapped up. The gold game and the silver game wrapped up around the same time. I think the gold game ended first. It's hard to say because I was in that one, and it was, it's like the fog of war. You kind of don't know what's going on around you. You're just so into the game. So Mad Hammers win that one with a round 6 concession on the U.S.'s turn. It's an Axis victory. I think we were at about 13 or 14 victory points at that point, and we could have possibly gone for more. So yeah, the gold went to the Mad Hammers. And then for silver, the Sauerkrauts edged out Midwest Command pretty handily for the silver, and that wrapped up too. And then for the bronze game, this was the game of the medal rounds. This was the game of the day. This one went the distance, and it was a close game all game. The axes were hovering between 10, 11, 12 VPs the whole time, and Moscow had fallen, I believe, on round 5. So I'm sorry if I'm butchering this, guys. I'm trying to go off of memory here. Moscow fell at around 5 with a heavy Barbarossa strategy, and Russia ended up getting Moscow back. Now this was Moscow playing in this one, Moscow and Raider Bill against the Apple Corps, and he got Moscow back with force. Then at the very end of the game, they took Rome with only 1 tank left, just like the other game with Team Blackhawk with Tokyo, and they flipped Italy, and they won that game. So Apple Corps played down into bronze against a team that was 0-2, and then the 0-2 team won the bronze. So it was a pretty exciting game to watch from the sidelines. So yeah, those were our medal rounds. Pretty exciting stuff, and we had medals we were handing out for all 4 of the tables. And this is an example. I think Moscow showed in his video the bronze, and this was the gold. So we actually had medals that the teams could play for, which is, I think, a nice touch. So yeah, the bronze game was the game of the day, and congratulations to everyone that was a part of the medal round games. They were all great games. You know, Prussian Grenadiers, they were outstanding players. They've improved so much over the years, and for anyone playing them in Atlanta, watch out, because they're a good team. Much respect to them. So okay, well, I think that's everything. Trying to remember if there's anything else to cover. Yeah, I wish I would have gotten everyone to sign the banner. I just wasn't thinking of it at the time, you know, with everything going on. But I had a fun time. It was a great weekend. You know, everyone else around me made it possible that I could play in the tournament and in the medal round, and also help run the thing too. So it was all of us as a community effort. You know, and a big thanks to my teammate, Hammer Time. The guy he's one of the best. I think he's definitely one of the best, and he's definitely headed to the top, in my opinion. So big shout out to Hammer Time, one of the best out there. And I hope we can do this next year. You know, we'll see what the interest is. Everybody seemed to have good things to say. So all right, that's it for me. I probably won't have any updates for a long time, but it was fun, and I hope we do it again next year. Take care.